Welcome to the HoCo Cyber Collective Podcast, where community, technology, and stories converge.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. This is our end of week session for the HoCo Cyber Collective. I'm here with Josh. We've had a 2 week to let things percolate since the last time. So Josh, how you been?
I'm doing real well. It's actually improved. My productivity has improved a lot, and found it is now Claude is now looking for stuff that in the way I want.
Perfect.
At
So
least,
just for
at least
background for
more.
people that don't know what we're talking about, 2 weeks ago, Josh had brought an interesting request to me, which was he had concerns that he was using Claude Code for development, and there's this fear that sort of undergirds a lot of things with AI that it's being too sycophantic, that it's too agreeable, it's wow, what a great idea, that sort of thing. Um, and what we did is we all sat together, Vivek is here as well, and we used ChatGPT to brainstorm, so to speak, some improvements. And Josh, you want to explain a little bit what you did with that?
Sure. So the general improvements that were recommended were to create essentially sub-agents with very specific guidelines that then are run against it, against the code, as needed, and then also some details on how to create a sort of a general prompt that guides things. And then a few other decisions that were made is having the agents keep a log of recommendations and resolutions, and then with a specific script for how I can override a pushback.
A special code,
Yep.
basically. And with the new improved Claude, we'll call it Claude 2.0. How did that go?
I mean, it is going well, although I've noticed something that it's doing now that I find really interesting. So one of the things that I started to do is put together a rolling to-do list. So I have end of every day, I put together a to-do list for tomorrow, as well as sort of what the week's goals are, and then longer term goals. And at the end of the day, I work off of that. I'm not bound to it. I'm always inserting stuff and pushing stuff back and things like that, but it's something to work off of. And at the end of the day, I sort of roll a new one with what was missed in the last one, what is still outstanding, and new stuff that have come up. And what I've found is that, and one of the things one of the agents I put together, and this was a later on agent, was a to-do list curator. So it looks at, I sort of maintain a list of long-term goals, sort of, wish list for the system, ideas I have, things like that in one document. And then I provided beginning of the week, I provided a detailed explanation of what the primary goal for the week is. And then it also can look through the findings of the other agents plus previous to-do lists. And from that, it sort of updates the today's to-do list and creates a new one, which works well, except that Claude Code is estimating, based on the to-do list, or now that I'm working off of the to-do list, is giving me sort of hour estimates. And then when it on the to-do list gets to the point where it's done 8 to 10 hours of estimated work, it starts talking about, well, let's call it a day at 11:30 in the morning.
Interesting. So it itself doesn't take it 8 hours. It just
No,
completes 8 hours worth of
it
work.
projects 8 hours worth of a human, a skilled human doing it by themselves. And it does 8 hours of work in half an hour.
And then
And
it
then
wants
I
to
take
stop.
half an hour, 45 minutes to review what it's done, to discuss next steps, and then push forward. And after it's gotten a fair amount in, it starts complaining about work.
Oh no. Oh, did it give itself a name?
No, it didn't. I didn't push that. Um,
Claude.
uh, but what it
But
here? Let me.
it's that's really funny. Oh no, they're unionizing. That's great.
Yeah. So this is my Claude.md. So this is the general description. And so regardless of running agents, everything using Claude Code reads through this. And this provides a general description of the system that I'm building, um, a layout of the repo, some the major components with some details, my unusual memory layout, some like I'm in WebAssembly, which is a sandbox, which means hardware capabilities are absent. So it specifically calls that out, saying if you suggest code that uses this, it won't work. um, Stuff like that. Then some of my more esoteric things, like I have logical packages, which is how I verify and establish concurrency across an asynchronous system. My packages in general, stuff like that. Some future architecture and plans, the async scope, message packages, another type of direct communication. Um, the what customer app and server and all of that mean, uh, all this sorts of stuff. Um, so this is fed in every time I start a new session. And here's my override mechanism. So it's when there's a critical or significant or high error or concern, I can override it using this code, and then it follows this script where it issues a final summary. It demands a substantive justification. So I can't just say because I want it. I have to actually explain it.
Because I wanna.
Yeah. And then restates everything. And then once it's confirmed, it writes it into an override design decision document. And then describes the template, scope notes. Um, it looks for reflexive completeness. Am I missing something? Stuff like that. Um, there's
So it's a flow
the
chart basically of how
yeah
to do all this stuff.
yeah analysis sweep protocol stuff like that, and then conventions. I'm running this as two projects. My server is one repo. My local WebAssembly and JavaScript is a second one. And so I have, basically two, since the systems are somewhat different, I mirror stuff, and they have similar agents, they have similar uh, protocols and all of that, but the local is allowed read-only access to the server files, and the server is allowed read-only access to the local.
Gotcha.
That's what this is. Some timekeeping. Um, of harness, so, and this has gotten, there's been more stuff added to this as I've been using it. This is how to actually build the thing, because doing just a straight regular build won't work. It needs massaging. Then describing some deeper documents and stuff like that. And then the original recommendation was 4 agents.
Yeah.
And the 4 agents was an engineering analyst, a security analyst, a testing analyst, and a cost analyst. And then since then, I've done a customer advocate, a pen test, and a to-do in my to-do. And so looking at the cost, all of these have very similar structures, but it's you are the cost efficiency analyst for BrunerDB. Your working question is always, does this change make Mimir's AWS bill larger, the customer's bill smaller, or BrunerDB substrate fatter in WASM? And what is the trade-off worth it? And so it's discussing sort of how billing will be done, where the costs are coming from, what rates I want to use. Like, I'm a hosting environment, so I think it's a safe assumption to always use the highest volume rate, which is the cheapest per gigabyte, per megabyte, whatever rate. Calling out to asymmetries. So for us, the user compute is free, but we will be invoicing customers on that. So that is money that we can make, but it doesn't actually cost us anything. And that's what this is saying. And then it talks about a typical customer profile, which I put down here. What is it called? Typical customer profile. Come on, typical customer. So this is a typical customer. So a mid-market B2B SaaS vendor has 250,000 users, 75,000 active users, 18,000 daily users, concurrency, data size, stuff like this. And all of this together puts out, where's my
agent findings?
Agent findings, yeah. So the cost recommendations, and it puts together maintained by the cost analyst. And so, and it defines what is critical and all of that. That's actually been resolved. Some of these I need to go back and have it re-verify stuff, but it does calculations down to fractions of a penny per customer per month.
Wow.
So, this is, running code could lead to 1 to 5 megabits. This is running a Python interpreter inside WebAssembly and what it would cost, which is what I was working on yesterday. But I've got archived cost recommendations. These are completed or decided things. So, so service worker storage classes default to S3 standard. So originally, I use S3 to store stuff. I just had the default setting. Since I've got so much that I'm going to be covering, the recommendation was use the S3 intelligent tiering, which it goes through, does all the math, and comes down to, where's the number? $450 per gigabyte per month. That's without it, assuming 1,000 customers of a typical customer size, I would have an AWS cloud bill of 580,000 for S3. Or this would save 20 to 30% off of that, which comes straight into my bottom line. This doesn't impact customers at all. And
I also like that. So this is all created and documented by the various agents. I imagine this
yes,
information will be very useful when you're going to investors or potential
yep,
buyers. And they ask these questions. You can give better answers than.
exactly. And so those were the original agents. Later on, I did a red team, blue team pen test agent. And I don't run this very often, but it uh, the scope is you are a blue team trying to defend against attacks, and you are a red team trying to penetrate the system. Uh, do your best. Tell me what you find.
And that's how Skynet started.
Hmm. And so, yeah, this is the report, and it's talking about a lying occasionally server, uh, customer hosting, insider threats, admin issues, attack scenario. So validation worker, which is the JavaScript utility that verifies that incoming packages have been signed properly and are legitimate. Uh, Accepts pub keys based on tofu, which is just trust the server and never chain walks them. And so what this identified is the fact that my original design, every user had registers a public key with the server, or actually two public keys for signing and asynchronous encryption. And that's what's used to verify identity. But if the server is compromised to the point where someone can manipulate the database, they can inject new or replacement certificates that then will come back as valid and can inject signed data into the system. And so what I ended up doing is putting a historical thing for the chain, the chains. So when you put up a new chain, a new pub key, you have to sign it with the old one.
Hmm. It's like the
And
old pass. What's your old password before you change the new?
exactly. And that is available to anyone, that signature is available to anyone who requests the pub key. And so they can look back and say, oh, this one is the descendant of this pub key, which I get that, and look at that signature all the way back to their original one, which then has the issue, how do you verify the original one?
Mhm.
And the original one is verified by having the server sign it. So the very first one, as the user is being registered, the server's public key or his private key signs it.
That's the
And
we know this is good.
yeah,
It's the known good
yep.
movement.
And then the user can track the server keys backwards. But then the server key has the issue. How do you verify the very first server one? So we have and the way we do that is we embed uh, the signature for the server key inside the WebAssembly executable. Or in other words, we have a full-fledged certificate authority.
Okay.
Certificate authorities, their base of trust are certificates that are hard coded into browsers and into operating systems that users can track back to that. That's exactly what we're doing.
Wow.
And this turned out to be a lot more in depth than I expected, than I was thinking of. And it took me a few hours to sort through all the implications. And then it took once I described it and said what I wanted, it took Claude Code 2.5 hours to implement it in both systems. And
Wow.
then it took another 4 hours for me to troubleshoot it and actually resolve the edge cases and stuff like that. And it's still flagged as one of the weak points. Specifically, one of the rules I have in this is a security by architecture, not by policy, which means we assume that our servers will be completely compromised. Adversaries will get in and will have full access to our servers, read, write, whatever.
Now what?
And the goal is customer data security, even with that assumption. And so the only exception to that I have is the secrets manager from AWS, which is where I keep the current server pub key and or server private key and the uh, passwords, basically, of any Mimir, automated Mimir managers. So I don't keep much there, but that is out of scope for being compromised. And so I spend a huge amount of time making sure that that's correct, but there has to be a line somewhere, and that's the line I drew.
Right.
And this red team, blue team is what identified that. Then later, I did a customer advocate where put yourself in the position of being Mimir's customer. What services and capabilities do you want? Would you like to see? What are you expecting and would be a deal breaker if they aren't there? And what irritates you, but doesn't necessarily run you off? Uh, and don't consider cost. And so this is what it ran. And so it cited my index.html hard codes customer credentials because it's a testing thing. There's only
Right.
one customer. And so superseded a couple of days ago, premise corrected by architect, which would be me. It's a dev CTF harness, not customer facing. Each customer hosts their own apps and calls it from server side credential, stuff like that. And that's all of this discussion. That's because it's the archive. It's been resolved. These are sort of outstanding ones, optimizations, service things. That's cost. Customer or customer recommendations. There we go. So one command import of an existing AWS Lambda plus DynamoDB plus S3 stack. That is my ultimate goal. Sandbox workspace, hosted. Click here to try, the sandbox with the disposable workspace, customer-shaped sample app. I mean, stuff like this. And I'm actually going to be running this again shortly. In fact, 4.5/29. Why don't we actually run it? Because that's my first thing on my to-do list for today.
Quick question while I was thinking, have you
Yeah.
noticed any change in your token usage, or do you have a visibility into that?
So I ran out of tokens one day in the last 2 weeks.
It's a daily amount you get?
It's reset every 5 hours. There's a weekly total, and then it's reset every 5 hours.
Gotcha.
And so the first action already set, run the customer advocate. Okay. Run the customer advocate on the so what I realized yesterday was that I needed to change the order of what I was building. One of the things I've always planned on doing is supporting a Python environment inside the Rust coded WebAssembly. So customers provide their own Python scripts, which then are run inside this environment and processed locally. And that has some nuances to it because some Python scripts or Python libraries like NumPy are difficult to run in this sort of environment and take a huge amount of memory. And so what I decided to do is sort of split up the coding or the Python coding, where basic scripts, sort of generic Python scripts, which can run on a system called MicroPython, will be run inside the main executable. Whereas the larger Python stuff that does heavier lifting, uses these unusual libraries, and can't run on this restricted environment, are run in a full plugin with a full emulated Python environment, which takes a whole lot more memory. And so, I was always planning on doing this, but I'd been putting it off because it is complex. Designing an environment, an emulated environment that other people can run random code that you have no control over. But I realized I needed to have that for my own onboarding process.
Okay.
So I started, so about 5, 6 o'clock last night, I started discussing this with Claude Code and came up with a bunch of different things to go over, or sort of plans. Let's see if I can. Where? I'm trying to remember what document it is. Yeah. Surface. I'm trying to remember what the. I think I put it in its own folder. Yeah, customer apps. So this is what Claude and I came up with yesterday. And it's decisions on how to run it, what it has access to, what the API surface looks like, stuff like that. And so now we're running the customer advocate specifically to investigate what sort of coding APIs will customers expect internally, to run their code, and how how customers and users will interact with the system from their front end, stuff like that. And that's what it's building, analyzing right now. And so the architecture of this, come on, there we go, is sort of general discussion. My first issue is I'm doing a manager service, which is a headless environment to run activities that I can run on, like Fargate, that logs a specific user in a headless environment and does stuff. For this, it's basically bringing in new users to share the encryption key and draining log files out of the secured system into the usable system. For the logs that are sent to me. And so this is the general architectural things we came up with. cooperative compute, what's covered, what's not, stuff like that. And these are some decisions. So no preemption primitives, or in other words, if someone writes a script that is blocking, WASM technically can't preempt that, although it sort of can. And this is the solution. Activation server driven. So this was a cost question. How much does running these things cost? Will it cost the company to run? Where MicroPython sits and why. Hot swapping code, Python code is being deferred. Different APIs, what customers see from the internal system, all sorts of stuff like this.
Pretty slick.
And so as of yesterday night, the system was up to about 215,000 lines of code and documentation.
That's pretty good. And I guess as the code creation since in the last 2 weeks been higher than normal, or is it going faster? Is it more thorough? What would you say?
I would say it is roughly the same rate, but the quality has improved. I'm not finding nearly as many obvious gaps in the logic.
That's pretty cool.
And I mean, part of that is the agents I specifically set up for the purpose of looking for those gaps. But the overall, the main thing as well gives, sort of outlines the system, so I don't have to explain the nuances of it every single time and have to, and it doesn't have to make the wrong choices because the architecture is unusual before realizing the architecture is unusual.
So because it's got that embedded into it. So now
Yeah.
the next thing.
So now the agent is spitting things out. So Python communication layer is missing. Yeah, we don't have that yet. So path handler, registration, name pass before version 1, name pass, fourth path name pass. I mean, I have no clue what's in here, but namespace collision.
D7 consequence undersold.
Yeah.
That's pretty clear.
Yeah. So one of the initial engineering questions was, or one of the things when I was discussing this originally, Claude Code wanted to build, sort of hard code the user onboarding and logging functions into the Rust WebAssembly as the simpler approach, which it would be. But I pushed back saying I wanted to do it in Python because all customers are going to need something like this, and we don't want to. I don't want to maintain multiple WebAssembly modules. I want the Mimir managers to be users, to use this system inside the system. And I don't want to, it would be a poor design decision to write custom modules for just us when other users, other customers will need it, or ship this code to customers who won't need it, who can't use it. And one of the things I cited sort of offhand was, and doing it this way, we can do hot swapping of functions mid-session. So if a customer or someone updates code, sends a new function out to the team or the application, it can be brought in and used inside that session rather than having to recompile the WebAssembly. And so it got fixated on that and cited, what if the session closes down, mid-process, and then a code update comes through. What do you do? And I said the function itself will have the ability to save to disk, which means put it in packages and save it into the system. If it doesn't do that, then it is leaving it in memory. And just like killing a process on an operating system, if it's in memory and the process dies, what's in memory goes away. Same thing here. If the user, the customer, doesn't explicitly say they want to keep this bit, I'm not going to. And that's what this is talking about. So session equals process lifetime. And we don't snapshot the process state. We started from scratch.
Well, thank you for showing underneath the covers. It's pretty cool to see Claude Code actually in action. And I'm glad that we went through this exercise because it does sound like, aside from it, kvetching about doing more than 8 hours of human work a day, which isn't interesting.
Yeah.
We've made the AIs lazy. We don't want to work.
And then, so after about 2 p.m., I have to constantly remind it, it's only 2 p.m. We've got another 4 hours.
Just tell it, hey, we slept. Now it's a new session. Go. A new day has begun. Your temporal sense is lacking. That's really fascinating. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more as it goes. You got the invite to the event next week?
Yes, it's on the 2nd, I believe.
Yep, that's happy to see that.
I'm going to be there.
I'm going to be there as well. It'll be good to, hopefully there's a good turnout. Looking forward to that. And again, building the community and seeing people in person, meet the people in cohort 3, and maybe see if we can get them to show up. And, this is kind of interesting though, that, the changes that you made were just basically having a Claude.md file, which is the rules that it follows. This is, I mean, obviously there's a certain level of customization for this particular project, but a lot of this could help other people.
Yeah. No, it took me 2 days of negotiating with Claude to build that.
I don't want to do it this way, but you're gonna.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And going through, seeing what it put down, correcting it. And then on my other one, my server side, I basically told it, look at the local side. I created a Claude.md and agents, create equivalent for the server, but customized for this the server project.
Gotcha.
And then reworked those as well.
So it spins up its agents in different instances.
I also define when the agents get run. I can define scope for the agent. So if I basically run them without criteria, they look at the diff, anything from the last sync up through what is currently there, and just evaluate that.
So they're only looking at what changed, which I imagine reduces the likelihood of, let me just delete everything and replace it. So
yeah. And then the testing agent, I actually have a special thing where once a week it is supposed to do a full sweep of the testing environment of the entire code base once a week. So that way, if something slips through and gets synced without having it run, it gets caught later.
And also, I imagine it helps that not burn through your entire week's worth of tokens by
Yeah.
anomalous, unnecessary, over
Yep.
enthusiastic testing running.
Now the most expensive one is the pen testing.
Makes
And
sense.
so I only run that one manually. And same with actually the customer recommendations, because the customer recommendations, what I did with that one, the customer advocate, it actually goes through and I define different customers to consider it as. So, primary buyers, uh, near-term buyers, situational, and then various personas of where are the personas? Mm, there we go. Software developer as a persona and what that means for different company types and different, then a program manager for the software, what that means, the executive of the company, what that means, a DoD, a government DoD persona, because as you recall, I have an Air Force award coming, and
Right.
so I want to make sure that
This is
that,
where the fun would have to have the agents have names or the
yeah,
so they make it in all seriousness though that the names for different agents on a team does make it sound
mm,
silly but easier to address things in a less wordy. If only there was a shortcut name for each
have
individual entity.
all the agents pick a name for themselves based on
Their
what
understanding of what
they
their purpose is.
do and the environment and the tech interactions they have had. Let's see what it spits out.
Hatching,
Yeah, doing combobulating, simmering.
naming,
Yeah, they just that's it's hourglass turning hourglass thing.
the status bar filling up.
Exactly. But without actually having an endpoint to know how long it's going to take.
Right? Time has no meaning. I guess these models don't because they're not sitting there waiting. They're spun into existence as they're doing their
Yes,
work, and then they wink out of existence when they're done, waiting for the next thing to do.
correct. They read their sort of the specified source documents as well as the incoming prompt. Uh,
Oh,
there we go. Vidar,
Heimdallr.
Heimdall.
And
So these are very Norse
that's
sounding,
see,
which
this is why I
considering,
like to do it because you can see where there's some whimsy slips in, where it
well,
didn't have to pick names like that.
I mean, Mimir is a Norse
That's
god,
that's probably
and
where that
Gunnar
came
is a
in, but
Norse. So
but at the same time, again, that's cool. That's what makes
yeah,
these sort of activities interesting to me because it didn't have to do that, but it did. It didn't pick like Steve or something like that.
mm, uh, you know, said as internally coherent, every agent labeled in Mimir's Norse neighborhood without poaching the wise counselor role reserved by Mimir himself.
Here's Norse neighborhood sounds like some children's show or something like that. These are the Norse gods in your neighborhood. In your neighborhood. That's fun. Does the And this also has the risk of going down rabbit holes on this sort of thing. But rather than they just refer to themselves with those names. So that makes it permanent.
Yeah.
These are not real people. I'm not having AI-induced psychosis. I have a sound mind. I just want my friends to have names. The personification. And honestly, what you're doing right now is what led me to create the rules document, because I found that I was spending so much time basically like shaping the AI to be in the right mindset, and you had to do it every single time,
Yeah.
which was, one thing I learned from undergrad comp sci is when there's a process that you have to do over and over and over and over and over again repeatedly, that tells you that you should consider automating.
Yeah. Now, one thing you had asked about token usage. /cost. So this is, you saw me start.
Right.
I've used 9% of my 5-hour sessions of tokens doing this. And I'm using Opus for everything. So I'm using the highest model for everything, or the most expensive model.
Gotcha. But as you said, because of the improvements, you're not
Yeah.
having to do rework. I guess that's where it goes, where you use the high-end agent and then it does something that you didn't want to do, and you try to make little tweaks to it, like you were doing before, without
Yeah.
any sort of guiding principle on that.
Yeah. Let's do the cost analysis.
Your virtual workforce is created. Please assign the jobs as needed.
Yes.
It's fun. Well, Josh, this is awesome. I got to get ready for my next call. But
Yeah.
no,
No. Oh, I cut the recording for a sec.
What's that? Yeah, just a sec.
Yeah.
Well, let's finish it up. So this is, thanks everybody for joining us. And I hope you found this interesting. We're going to check back in with Josh. And again, this has been the HoCo Cyber Collective, signing off for the week. Talk to you everyone later.
Thank you for listening to the HoCo Cyber Collective Podcast. Stay connected, stay curious, and join us again for our next episode.
Brought to you by the HoCo Cyber Collective.